The order that emerged in the kind of post-Cold War era has run its course. We are seeing the kinds of disruptions that you see from time to time in any kind of global order. We can't quite see yet what the next global order will look like, but one will surely emerge. And then the question is whether we can build it in a way that is constructive and that continues the opportunities for economic growth around the world or not. That's a challenge. The US withdrawal creates a vacuum for leadership in which, India is one of a very small number of countries that's really well positioned to help shape a productive next global order. In the US, the easiest way to think what's happening now is you have normal politics, and then you have these moments where one branch or another makes a bid to really fundamentally alter the constitutional order. And that's what's happening here. The Trump administration, if you look past the particulars, is really making a bid to shift the US model towards a CEO model, which the president, the executive branch, is actually superior to the other two. And that would be a major change. It's actually contrary to the whole purpose of the American Revolution, which was, after all, overthrowing a king. One of the places where India is incredibly impressively advanced is in the digital transformation, much more so even than most developed countries.
India is an extraordinary case with the number of people who have come out of the poverty, abject poverty, in the last decade or so has been extraordinary and phenomenal.
It gives me great pleasure to welcome you to the London School of Economics, where we're coming to you from. And it gives me also great pleasure to be talking to two fine minds, I want to say. And this is a testament to how fine minds across the globe can come together and discuss topics which can be of relevance to the entire world. Professor Larry Kramer, who is President and Vice Chancellor of London School of Economics, thank you for joining us at NDTV. Thank you. And our dear friend, Mr. N.K. Singh, who is not only India's sharp, fine mind and an economist, but also someone who holds a very important position of being co-chair of the India Advisory Board here at the London School of Economics. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Singh. Let's start with you. You were in India. How was that not long ago? And please share with us your quick observations, comments on just what you picked up from, let's say, ground zero on India's growth and trajectory.
So, the most interesting thing, I think, was just the energy and the optimism. I had last been in India before COVID, so around 2018, 2019, and the amount of change in just the short number of years since I had last been there was astounding. And as everyone I talked to, there was such optimism about the country's future and about the economic growth that's taking place and about the opportunities. It's exciting and energizing just to be there.
Yeah, excellent. We know that this is not a secret anymore. There are several Indias within India. There are different stories within India. And Mr. Singh, there is the low-income category, the middle-income category, and then there is the high-income category. And there is so much aspiration for one to progress to the other. Given Professor Kramer's recent visit and given what's happening in the globe, may I ask, what is the way for India to navigate from the categories to be where it wants to be, which is the aspiration of being in the high-income category?
So first and foremost, I think that, yes, India is not homogeneous in the sense of it is not homogeneous in terms of income levels, in terms of access to services, in terms of the quality of health and education which exists. It is not homogeneous. It is homogeneous, however, Radhika, in one aspect, what Larry said exactly. It is homogeneous in the sense of being aspirational. Throughout the north and south and the length of breadth of India, the aspiration and energy of not only the world's most populous country, of 1.4 billion people, but you look at the age dependency ratio, you look at the demography itself, the number of people who are seeking to improve their life quality. In fact, one very important index, Radhika, is that India is an extraordinary case with the number of people who have come out of the poverty, abject poverty, in the last decade or so has been extraordinary and phenomenal. And the number of people and the addition to the middle class in India, adding to the aspirational values of a middle class is something which is somewhat, and the social harmony and the overall societal harmony which exists, within which high rates of economic growth are being pursued. You rightly asked the question, what's the path forward? The path forward is exactly what? To achieve a rate of growth, irrespective of the global uncertainty, achieve a growth rate of around 7 to 8% in real terms, with nominal terms will come to about 11%, given the power of compounding and the fact that already, even at this, we are not very far away from becoming the third largest economy in the world. We're well on the way, hopefully, to realize our quest to become a developed economy by 47.
Sure, thank you. Is that something you picked up as well as energy, the social transformation alongside the economic transformation? How did the mingling, etc.? Just some candid comments on that.
So, I mean, I would say, as someone who was a new visitor there, it was hard to perceive one way or the other. You know, I'd have to have spent a lot more time there and really have visited a lot more places than I did. You know, what I will say is those two things always go together, though. It is really impossible to have the kind of ambitious growth that India has planned and not have it bring about a social transformation at the same time. That's the nature of those. It creates opportunities for everybody. So
Great. You did allude, Professor Kramer, to my questions being more education related, and certainly they will be, because education and the sector is such an important space for India, Indian students, especially LSE, one of the key sort of magnets really for Indian students. But let me get your comments first on the fact that there has been a decline for international students coming to the United Kingdom. Has that deeply affected universities such as yours, especially the coffers?
Well, it hasn't actually affected LSE very much, but you know, we're a little different than other UK universities in that our commitment to international students predates pretty much everybody else. It really goes back to the origins of the school in the early 20th century. It has affected the country, but again, I think that's going to turn out to be a relatively short-term effect. It was a product of various policies that the last government had, including communications, which really suggested that the UK was not welcoming of international students. The current government
Is that the case?
No, absolutely not. And the current government has turned that around and been very explicit that we want international students to come. They enrich the educational sector for UK students, but they also, you know, they take what they learn here, they go back to their home countries. It's really one of the sort of great exports, in effect, of the UK to the world. So in all respects, it's a strong thing for universities to focus on.
Yeah, great. And that's how the healthy exchange of ideas happen. Let's talk about the Indian education sector for a bit. Would you spot that the fact that there is this two solution or two challenges that the Indian sector faces? One is to improve its cutting edge technology, as we were chatting, Mr. Singh, and also to have a huge generation of jobs in a large scale, considering the size of the country, the aspiration that young people have, and the size of the number of young people in the country, for instance. How do you propose that that can happen parallelly? And some words of advice there.
Well, again, I think they go together very well, which is to say the biggest and best driver for economic growth is education. I mean, everybody has recognized that for hundreds of years. So India has a challenge equal to its ambitions, or ambitions equal to the challenge, I suppose, just in the sense that there are so many students. Someone told me that the country would need to open sort of one university a week for the next 30 years to keep pace, which is astonishing, but also possible. And that's where there are opportunities for schools like LSE and outside of India to help with that, to the benefit both of India and the countries that the schools are coming from. So, you know, it's a kind of all oars in the water together really creates enormous possibilities to educate the next generation and then have that generation produce the economic growth that will then make it easier to educate the next generation, and you get a virtuous cycle.
Great. We again are coming to you from the London School of Economics, and here in London, my conversation with Professor Kramer and Mr. N.K. Singh is coinciding with the time that the Finance Minister of India, Ms. Nirmala Sitharaman, is here continuing the India and the UK economic dialogue. And my question at this time, while India is projecting its story quite articulately, may I ask, at a time in our world when globalization generally has come under stress. But unlike earlier, when it was the need and it was the natural sort of behavioral pattern for countries to cooperate, to collaborate on just achieving that stability, shared economic stability. How do you see globalization, let's say 3 years from now?
It's hard to see it 3 weeks from now, right now. I mean, there is so much, disruption going on. But look, here's a couple things we know for sure. It's not going to stop. Right? It's not possible at this point. So the order that emerged in the kind of post-Cold War era has run its course. We are seeing the kinds of disruptions that you see from time to time in any kind of global order. We can't quite see yet what the next global order will look like, but one will surely emerge. And then the question is whether we can build it in a way that is constructive and that continues the opportunities for economic growth around the world or not. That's a challenge. The US withdrawal creates a vacuum for leadership in which, India is one of a very small number of countries that's really well positioned to help shape a productive next global order. I think it's beyond certainly my capacity to tell you what that global order should be, much less, or what it will be, much less what it should be.
Okay, your comments, Mr. Singh. With globalization generally under stress, India's position, the tact that nations generally are likely to take.
Well, I think that India has been an active partner in the phenomena where globalization was resulting in overall global good. To India's economic good, having achieved the benefit of high rates of economic growth in terms of what advantages of interdependency can be. But I think that we have hedged our policies, I wouldn't say the bets, but certainly we have hedged our strategy reasonably well to mitigate the impact of uncertainty and to try and maximize the opportunities which this revised changing global order can be. We do believe, we realize that we are not always driven necessarily by trust, but we are certainly always driven by the reassertion of continuing national interest. We must forge and adapt our policies to see new emerging opportunities. Now, here are some of the things which we can credibly do. One is that we need to alter the destination and the composition of our exports to suit what our emerging comparative advantages might be. We need to also adapt our policies to ensure that we have enough fiscal space available to deal with exigencies. And third, we are conscious of the fact that India's own domestic market of 1.4 billion people with a rising aspirational class has opportunities which are quite enormous. Something that Larry said, I just want to add to that yes, it is our quest to be at the cutting edge of emerging technologies, at what AI and variations of AI would offer, at the same time to ensure that adequacy of gainful employment does not go by the by-side. So that's part of the conscious policy. The number of apprenticeship program which the government is fostering, the number of high employment intensive programs which we are doing, the special initiative, for instance, that was taken, if you recall, Radhika, in the last budget itself, where corporate sector was made an active partner in imparting skills to students and to those who are undergoing the skilling program to be later on of relevance to their own corporate framework. So as we expand, the nature of jobs must be adapted with skilling program, apprenticeship programs, which are employment focused to derive the maximum benefit from access to the highest quality of technology while ensuring the adequacy of gainful employment.
Great. Yeah.
I want to add a couple thoughts to that just occurred as I'm listening. So one is, one of the places where India is incredibly impressively advanced is in the digital transformation, much more so even than most developed countries. And the jobs of the future, wherever they are going to turn on that, although not in the sense of everybody needs to be trained in technology. It's the jobs will be transformed. So what it is people's jobs are going to be is going to change. So staying ahead of that is one of the challenges for the education system and for all of the countries. The finance minister yesterday talked really, I thought, thoughtfully about, we've had a multilateral international order, and it looks like it's shifting to one that may be bilateral. But a bilateral order, if it does emerge, there's the kind of old mercantilist one where what it is every country out for themselves to the maximum extreme. But there's also a different kind of, bilateral order where people are recognize the need to think about trade-offs both within their own countries and in their international dealings between what they're trying to do for their citizens as consumers and what they're trying to do for their citizens as workers. And the tendency in international trade has been to focus on people as consumers and not really paying adequate attention, and that's where the negative effects arose that have created a lot of the tensions. But it's equally true inside every country. So the same kind of dissatisfaction we see with democratic governments inside is because of that same set of trade-offs. So there's a real opportunity in building a new multinational order, even if it's based on bilateral agreements, to think about better trade-offs that would work for both countries in terms of their citizens as consumers and their citizens as workers. And that's going to be the challenge, I think.
Sure. Like never before, I think there has been an opportunity to really, for nations to come out of their regular comfort zone and spot the opportunity first, and then to redefine approaches and strategies. Let me pick your legal brain a little bit, considering whatever is happening in the United States, and this was something that Mr. Singh was keen to hear from you. What do you think? Well, we've read theories of what could happen should the US president defy the Supreme Court ruling, et cetera, and et cetera. So maybe brief comments on that. But I'm more interested in learning if you've seen or spotted a precedent whereby the world could see and emulate from a system where a balance could be struck between judicial rulings or judicial and independence.
Well, there is no one balance between judicial independence and, let's call it, judicial accountability. That is to say, you can't have a court that's just making rulings that it expects everybody to listen to that pay no attention to the political institutions of the country. A degree of statesmanship is absolutely and always required. So the question is how to find that right balance, and it varies from country to country and from time to time within countries. In the US, the easiest way to think what's happening now is you have normal politics, and then you have these moments where one branch or another makes a bid to really fundamentally alter the constitutional order. And that's what's happening here. The Trump administration, if you look past the particulars, is really making a bid to shift the US model towards a CEO model, which the president, the executive branch, is actually superior to the other two. And that would be a major change. It's actually contrary to the whole purpose of the American Revolution, which was, after all, overthrowing a king. But nevertheless, it's a bid to change the constitutional order. It will come to a head in the court if the court stands up in cases that are brought in the instances where that challenge is playing out, if the court stands up and says no. Now, what the court is doing right now, you can see, is it's not that they're avoiding what probably is an inevitable clash in these little procedural issues while the cases are in their early stages. I don't think they're signaling that they're supporting what the Trump administration is doing, but nor are they signaling that they oppose it. They're just letting the cases play out and not getting drawn in the very early phases of the case. So we won't see what this really amounts to probably for another year, maybe a year and a half. But at some point, the cases will come to the court. I expect, actually, the court will rule against the Trump administration on many of the important issues because the existing law is so clear that the Trump administration is trying to change. And when that clash happens, if the president defies the court, what will happen is actually what the American system is designed to do, is that clash itself forces the issue back to the only body that can ultimately decide, which is the public. And most of the time, the public, there are people actively engaged on both sides, but most of the time, most citizens, they're going about their lives. They're not living and fighting the daily political issues, and you don't want them to. I mean, imagine trying to run a country if everybody was stoked up all the time about politics. So that's not what you want, but when you get to these major issues, that's when you need the public to engage. And a clash where the court says, do X, and the president says, I'm not going to do it, will force public opinion. And wherever the public lands is where the country will go. It's just inevitable that way. Whether it stiffens the backbones of political leaders in the other branches to finally stand up and act, or simply signals the president that you have to back down, or nothing you're trying to do will get accomplished. One way or another, in any real democracy, if the public is clear on the issue, that's where things go.
Thanks so much. Did you have final comments?
No, I just wanted to say that, listening to Larry on legal issues is always very educative and illuminating. I did try to reflect, Radhika, that if I introspect, that what are some of the key areas of structural economic reforms in India which would greatly accelerate India's economic growth trajectory.
Yeah.
One clearly, Radhika, is the reforms of the Indian legal rubric, not in terms of laws which have been recrafted and enacted by Parliament, but in terms of the interlocutory procedures, in the pendency, in the speedy delivery of the justice system, and the entire ways in which the old saying that justice delayed is justice denied. An average investor would tell you that, of course, India has a great and a very fair judicial system, but you want the outcomes in a reasonable period of time to be able to plan investment decisions. So I hope that the current controversies all over the world would really encourage us to rethink something where we had taken some important decisions, but when we retracted from those decisions in some form or the other, to put a structure which would combine the virtues of accountability in fair measure, no doubt, without compromising the autonomy which is necessary. People's faith in the entire judicial rubric in India needs to be much more reinvigorated, and investor confidence, where repeatedly the delays and the tardiness of the Indian judicial system is a handicap in our international rating, can be overcome. So I think that's the kind of conclusion which I draw from listening to someone like Larry, who knows the legal things exceedingly well.
Thank you. Thanks for that. Autonomy, accountability, and speed, of course, three key things which could improve. Well, you said it, you feel enlightened. I certainly could have cups and cups and cups of tea listening to the two gentlemen speak about a variety of topics, but I'm going to conclude just now. Thanks very much for your thoughts on a variety of subjects, but my key takeaway is that while the Indian growth and economic story is one that is being so beautifully recognized and reckoned by the world at a time when globalization is at a general stress, there is perhaps optimism, even as there is aspiration to be able to be agile, spot an opportunity, redo something that has been done for years and years, maybe because the opportunity demands it or the new era we are in demands it, which probably India's agility can offer. Radhika Iyer signing off from the London School of Economics. NDTV.